So hello and welcome to All Four Quarters, your one-stop shop for news, reviews, and overreactions to all things NFL. The draft is here, so dun 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 dun, you're on the clock. Right, so we got Connor here and we got Ronan.
Hello.
How are we getting on, Ronan? How's all down in Cork for possibly the last time?
Yeah, the final days here in Cork. Just moving stuff up to the new gaff up near your end of the wood. So that's getting fairly far along at this point. So hopefully that'll be sorted within the next few weeks. And yeah, by the time we talk again, we'll be well past the draft and past that, I would hope. So yeah, other than that, things are going fairly well. Work's going well and stuff. So happy with it.
That's good to hear. Now, we're looking forward to having you up a bit closer. Yeah, nothing too wild or crazy on my side either. Weather's getting a little bit nicer. It's starting to feel a little bit more like summer. Finished up a load of gardening work. My back is in bits, but other than that, all good. The ravages of age, Ronan, it'll come for you too. We had quite a while between this and the last one, so we've got quite a lot of news to get through. So we'll crack straight on in there. Into controversy corner. So the NFL has started onboarding replacement referees due to an impasse with the Referees Association, or their union, who are negotiating their new collective bargaining agreement that expires in May. Basically, the disputes are to do with the probationary period. There's kind of a dead period in the off season, and reducing seniority for playoff selection so that other refs will be able to get in and ref the playoff games. It's an interesting one because it's not that long ago that we had the replacement refs in over one of these disputes, and it did not go well. I think we all remember was it the Green Bay game where it went so
the Hail Mary.
Yeah, it went so incredibly poorly that like in 24 hours they just kind of agreed to terms and got the normal refs back out. So.
Now you say it's not that long ago, but it is over a decade ago. So
that's not that long, That's a decade ago. That's what, like 2003. Like that's fine. But no, it's an interesting one because obviously all for the refs getting paid more, but also I don't like the refs in general. So it's an interesting one. You got to support the workers even if you don't like the workers, I suppose. But yeah, the NFL have passed a 1-year rule to try and help themselves out here. So if they do end up with the replacement refs coming in, essentially allowing the eye in the sky, the head office in New York to correct incorrect decisions, and also disqualification stuff. If there's an on-field disqualification, they can step in and adjust that and so on. It's posturing to an extent, we're lining up your replacements, so you don't have the leverage you think you do, and we've got sky cams now, so we can make sure that the crappier refs are kept in line and so on. But you got to imagine, the NFL makes enough money as it stands, and these refs, they're paid well, but it's not a particularly large wage bill in the context of the NFL. So I'd imagine this should just get done. Fingers crossed. They also adjusted some other bits like the kickoff rules, so you can now do an onside kick whenever, removes that kind of 50-yard kickoff loophole thing, and one more player is allowed off the restraining line. But it's mostly just they need to get this ref thing sorted, right? Because I don't want to see the opening of the season and your Seahawks going out to battle and getting very confusing calls and refs who don't have a clue what's going on.
Yeah, I think the way this is all structured suggests there's a bit of a clash between what the NFL wants and what the refs want, and obviously the publicly available disputes are, as you said, the NFL wants to increase the probationary period. They want to, basically reduce the amount of time the refs are off. And one of the big things with the refs is that they are still part-time. Most of them have other professions, and the NFL, I get the sense, wants full-time refs since they are paying them a non-trivial amount of money. I think it's like 300, 400, 500k.
I think it starts at 200k or 250k. Yeah. So the idea that that's your part-time side hustle is mad to me. But America is mad to me when it comes to these things.
Yeah, and to be fair, the NFL refs are then talking about other refs in other leagues at the NBA, but the NBA refs ref a lot more games. So then the NFL refs obviously would say, well, NFL games are more complex and in a much more dynamic environment, and et cetera, et cetera. And obviously the idea of reducing seniority is obviously something that's not going to be very in terms of being picked for playoff games. It's obviously not something to be very happy with the current set of refs versus the new refs. We're obviously going to see that kind of conflict often happening with the NFLPA's own negotiations with the league in terms of the different cohorts and the relative importance here. Although I would say in this case the older refs probably have more power than the older or more expensive players in the NFL. And so it definitely feels like a situation where both teams are staring this down, and you could definitely see something happening. Whether it's done by the end of May, which is when the official deadline is, probably not.
No.
But something that happens over the summer before the actual real games happen, like after the preseason, I could see that definitely happening. And we've seen in the previous experience that these refs can probably come in cold and they'll be fine, basically. But you see the NFL making the power play of basically going, okay, we're going to be replacing refs, but we're going to have this contingency of the central office being able to change Fail Mary type scenarios, and they hope that will kind of take off the heat. Whether that's a rule they want to keep permanently and another potential point of dispute with the refs, we'll see. But it certainly gets the sense that the money is somewhat of an issue. I think they're fairly close there, and this idea of having more central help from the refs, I don't think they're too against that. So these other issues, it kind of feels more. And I think that just that bigger fight over part-time versus full-time is probably where the big dispute is coming for the refs in the kind of short to medium term.
Yeah, of course. Next up, crime and punishment. What are they doing? Probably felonies. Puka Nakua continues to speedrun his career into the ground as quickly as he humanly can. He's now being sued with accusations of anti-Semitic remarks and biting women. Puka has now countersued for defamation and has popped himself into rehab. Very, very quick PR playbook being run here by them all. But yeah, just Puka Nakua has gone from 2 years ago being like the lovely, fresh-faced, like boy done good kind of thing to what the fuck is going on here at all. This is like the fifth or sixth time in the last 12 months he's been in this section, and he needs to get his shit together. Interestingly, it does sound like the Rams are still looking at an extension for him, or at least that's the rumors that are flying around, which frankly, if the last 6 months are anything to go by, it sounds like this is not the player you want to give a second contract to. This is the guy who you want to like use for his first 4 years, because I think he wasn't a first, he was a later rounder, right? So they've only got 4 years plus, then they could franchise tag. But like, let someone else have the Antonio Brown headache of the second and third contracts and get out of it. But hopefully he gets his shit together and everything goes right. But Puka Nakua not doing fantastic at the moment. We have a few bits of miscellaneous news as well. We've got a linebacker, Levante David, retired after 14 years. He did his whole career with Tampa Bay, got a Super Bowl ring, lots of All-Pro and Pro Bowl nods. Very, very good player for a very long time, presumably going to waltz into the Hall of Fame. And cornerback Stephon Gilmore is retired after 13 seasons. He obviously won the Super Bowl with New England. He was a 2019 Defensive Player of the Year. He has 2 All-Pros, 5 Pro Bowls, 32 interceptions. I don't know if he'd be a lock for the Hall. Maybe Hall very good. I don't know what that group looks like in about 5 years' time, who'll be coming in. But like a very, very strong career from him anyway. And we also got an announcement that Hard Knocks will be Seattle in 2026 and New England in 2027. Hard Knocks has fallen off a little bit in the last couple of years. I think everyone is much more media trained. It's a much more controlled environment, and there's just a lot of content being put out by the teams themselves, so it's not quite as novel, I think, as it was in its earlier.
Well, even Hard Knocks themselves now has multiple variants of itself, like there's season 1 and stuff like that.
It's maybe getting a little bit too big for its boots at this stage, because
and the only interesting one, which was like the off-season one, got canned after 1 year because it basically made Joe Shane look like an idiot.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll probably be talking about Joe Shane in this draft section, but it seems like maybe they were right and there wasn't just jiggery-pokery going on. He does seem to have lost all power in that building, but I think that's a discussion for another time. Let's have a look at some of the extensions and transactions around the league. So we had Indianapolis got the deal done with Daniel Jones, 2 years, $88 million. Maybe a little bit pricey, particularly coming off that injury, but I was never a fan of what they were doing with that transition tag thing anyway. They extend Alex Pierce, 4 years, $114 million. Very good money for him. We'll see if he can maybe get his volume numbers up, because his performance was great whenever he had the ball. He just wasn't getting it as often. And they've also traded wide receiver Michael Pittman to Pittsburgh. Nominal determinism continues to thrive in the NFL. So Pittman to Pittsburgh for a 6th for 7th round swap, and Pittsburgh gave him a nice extension. Houston extended Will Anderson, their edge rusher. So I think they tagged him, or they didn't tag him. They picked up his option and then negotiated. Interestingly, I think they picked up 2 options, and there's a bit of a question about Normally, you would expect it's the quarterback that gets the deal done first, but Anderson gets a 3-year, $150 million contract, resetting the edge market, 50 million per year. Whereas the biggest beforehand was Parsons at 46.5 million per year, and another record-setting contract with your boys, Ronan Jackson Smith and Jigba, after his incredible season last year. 4 years, $168.8 million, resets the wide receiver market by about 2 million over what Jamar Chase was getting paid. So a couple of big names in there. Anyone you want to chat about in particular?
Yeah, like I think the Colts one is probably the least impressive, but probably the most important, in the sense that like Daniel Jones, I think we're all about in the record kind of saying that we don't really think Daniel Jones is a franchise quarterback. Like he
No.
played some decent football at the start of last year, but it does increasingly feel like the Colts are just like holding on to early 2025 season and hoping they can recreate that, and it doesn't really feel like that's going to come together. And Alec Pierce,
Some of that stems from, I believe the ownership there has kind of made it clear that they're not taking a down year, they're not taking a year off. That essentially the coaching staff slash general manager are done for if they don't do well this year. I'm not sure that Daniel Jones is the answer to solving that, but I don't think they had too many options available to them at that point.
yeah, and desperation, we know in the NFL at those type of situations, last chance saloon is when some of the worst decisions tend to happen. Like Alec Pierce, probably overpaid, but not the kind of ridiculous overpay you might have expected, given he actually was very close to making free agents. Like this contract literally came on the day that the free agency opened up. But still, quite a quite a lot of money for a player, as you say, who's never proven to be, more than kind of complimentary wide receiver. A very efficient, very explosive complimentary wide receiver.
What was
But
it, 22
someone,
yards per catch or
yeah,
something was his average? But like that's what I mean. Like he's good, but he's not a volume guy. And presumably with this kind of money, they're going to have to ask him to do a lot more. Like he's going to have to step into that more of a WR1 role, right?
exactly. But it's, they have Josh Downs who has some potential. They traded for Adonai Mitchell for the Jets there last year, so they have other options there. But is there someone there who you can rely as in a volume play? Because you've just traded away Michael Pittman, who, not the most exciting player, but someone who is very efficient as a possession type receiver.
Yeah.
I don't really know if they have someone like that there at the moment. And obviously there's trade requests for people like Kenny Moore. So like these two moves have restricted everything else that they're doing, and obviously the Anthony Richardson situation continues to go on there. As to the other two ones, like look, Will Anderson is a stud. Like you saw that in the playoffs, for
Yeah.
example, where he was terrorizing tackles, and he certainly wasn't why they lost that game. And probably part of the reason they paid him first is because they certainly didn't lose because of him, and they might have lost because of CJ Stroud. Like I think if they could do a reasonable extension for Stroud, I'm sure they'd do it. But I'm sure Stroud is looking for QB1 type money, which is not cheap at the moment. But Will Anderson is an absolute phenom, and it's well worth the high pick that they get from him, and well worth its money. And I think the way it's usually structured with these players to get extended first is that the end of their rookie contract is kind of being tacked onto it, so it doesn't look like it's expensive when you lay out
Yeah,
the kind
like
of 5 years that they have left.
realistically, it's going to be like a 4-year, 180 million or something
Yeah.
like that. It's like, or yeah, something along those lines. So.
And then similarly, Jackson Smith and Jigba obviously blown up last year, but obviously he's been an effective player and grown year on year. And similarly, obviously by extending him early, then the overall contract you take isn't as expensive, but in terms of the extension itself, resets the market. And he obviously proved that he was a wide receiver one and has now won the Super Bowl. So there's no reason why you wouldn't be paying someone who's going to be a central part of your offense for many years to come. There was some other extensions, less important. Trayvon Walker got 4-year, 110. That kind of puts him towards the top of the DT tackle and around top 10ish at the edge market. Kind of reflects his kind of weird kind of status
role,
now.
yeah.
Former number one overall pick, but not quite sure what his effective role is. Would it be as good if he didn't have Josh Hines Allen beside him? Jordan Davis, 3 years, 78 million, gets an extension from Eagles. Eagles love getting extensions done early. It's interesting they did this over Carter, who's obviously presumably holding out for a bit more money. So we'll see how that develops. But
I think
Davis
he
is
probably
locked up.
he walked into the negotiations and spat on them, right? He said,
Yeah,
no,
so they
away with you.
So Davis took the money early. Carter, keep an eye on that. Trent Williams, there was some disputation between him and San Francisco about getting extension done. They finally get 2 years, 50 million done this week. And then Brandon Aubrey resets the kicker market by not that much, to be honest, only at 0.5 million, 4 years, 28 million. But given his success as a kicker,
Yeah.
I think there was rumors he was looking for more, but I think obviously he ended up being set much closer to the rest of the
Yeah,
kicker market
yeah,
than probably
because
hoped.
there was a story going around that he was looking for 10 million, and then he came out and said, no, he's not. That's not what he's asked for at all. But it's one of those ones that kind of Chinese whispers around the league, I'd imagine. We had some trades as well, so it's not just the draft, which we will be getting to, don't worry. Trades can be used to help your team at this point. So Denver decide they want to beef up their wide receiver room. So they sent their first pick, the number 30, their third and their fourth round pick for Jalen Waddle from the Dolphins, and a 2026 fourth round pick. This obviously a big help to Denver. Really good player. Has some injury issues here and there, but overall very, very strong player. Nice addition to it. Um, I would be very worried about who's going to take the field for the Dolphins at this point, but we'll see. Cincinnati, just there 3 days ago or so, gave us a nice bit of excitement. Yeah, it was Saturday just gone. They've decided to trade their first round pick, the number 10 overall, for defensive lineman Dexter Lawrence from the Giants. They gave him a 1 year $28 million extension, which was very surprising. One of the things we were expecting was that this was going to come alongside a very large extension, a very large pay increase, but it turns out no, Lawrence did just absolutely fucking hate the Giants and didn't want to be there anymore. I was hearing more details about this as it goes on, which is phenomenal. So apparently he refuses to talk to Joe Shane, who we mentioned. He's the general manager of the Giants, but since Harbaugh has come in, he's basically cut out of the loop. Doesn't have any decision-making process. Doesn't really sit in there anywhere. Doesn't make any sense. I would imagine he'd be fired if they didn't, I believe, technically have to have a general manager. But yeah, he refused to talk to him. He wouldn't talk to John Harbaugh. It was very interesting. So he just wanted out, and he's very happy to be in Cincinnati. A big help to them. Maybe an expensive pick, but given that it wasn't as expensive to extend him, actually the extension I believe helps the Cincinnati with their managing the cap around it as well. And obviously it'll be a reflection. We'll talk about it in the mock draft about maybe how they saw the board falling and them not being able to get the defensive line help that they wanted. And the Jets, they just wanted to complete the circle. They traded a 2026 sixth round pick for Geno Smith and a seventh round pick from the Las Vegas Raiders. So Geno is coming home. Just make sure you don't invite him to any charity events.
And the check finally bounced, and he's back in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Look, Denver, I think a big need that they felt they had was for additional weapons for Bo Nix and that offense. They're a very complete squad at the moment. They have very few real needs, but having that hopefully bona fide wide receiver one would make a difference, and someone who can then replace Cortland Sutton as that kind of alpha dog there. They have a lot of other mouths to feed on that offense, but an elite mouth is always going to be worth more than that. I think the number 30 overall pick in this draft feels like a more than reasonable play for that. Cincinnati, yeah, probably a little bit expensive for Lawrence, but as you say, I think the sense that people were getting in the insider circles was that those kind of blue chip defensive talents, which we'll talk about in a second, they weren't going to fall to number 10, and therefore by cashing the chip in for Dexter Lawrence made sense, and they can make the money work there, especially when they lost Trey Hendrickson and stuff this offseason. And then Geno Smith, look, I have no idea will work or not. This definitely feels more like a kind of fill in for a year or two at most. You feel like, but I have to believe that Geno Smith will be better quarterback than Justin Fields was.
Yeah, 100%.
Given what and the one thing they do have in Jets there is a pretty good offensive line, and if you have a good offensive line and you have some weapons, what the Jets have, then I think Geno could have maybe not all the way back to his Seattle first year where he blew up, but back to being a solid, starter level quarterback.
Like increasingly, the more and more you read about the coaching that was going on in the Raiders last year, the less I blame Geno for how bad he was, because it just sounded off. You heard the story about the calls being called in the headset that have not been prepped and are not on the call sheets and stuff like that. It sounded ridiculous. We had some signings as well. There are free agents out there. Las Vegas picked up Kirk Cousins on a 5-year, $172 million deal. It's not really that. It's really a 1 year, $20 million deal. It's a structure that allows him. So because Atlanta are still paying him, similar to what we discussed about Tua and Kyler, that they're going to be playing for vet minimums. We'll talk about them in a second. Essentially, this means that he will get paid the 20 million, because in theory the 20 million is paid across the body of this contract. So it's structured so that he will get paid the 20 million even though he's still getting paid by Atlanta. So Kirk Cousins is just a absolute just a stud bag grabber. He's never not made as much money as humanly possible. It's incredible. Speaking of making as much money as humanly possible, Vegas also decided to sign center Tyler Linderbaum away from Baltimore. 3 years, $81 million, which for a center, we talked about, we talked about resetting markets. This is $9 million a year more than the second placed center in this list. Like that, this is a ridiculous overpay. Look, they wanted their guy. I get it. They like him. They're going to lock him in because they're going to draft Mendoza first overall, and they want to have a center that he can build a relationship with and all that kind of stuff. But my God, what an overpay. They then picked up defensive lineman Quiddy Pay, 3 years, $48 million. Quay Walker at linebacker, 3 years, $40 million. And N'Kobe Dean for 3 years, $36 million at linebacker as well. So they've got a lot of pieces there. And in addition to that, as we'll talk about now with Baltimore, they have Max Crosby back in the building because that that trade fell apart. Baltimore, obviously we talked about it beforehand, made a big trade for Max Crosby, and then they said that he failed his physical and they weren't going to continue with the trade. And it's a bit Stinky Davis, a little bit kind of not cool the way they did it. But they then went off and signed Trey Hendrickson for 4 years, 112 million, which is cheaper, less resources out the door, and so on. And many would say maybe this was actually what they were planning all along, and they just weren't sure if they'd be able to get Trey at the price they wanted. Minnesota have picked up Kyler Murray, which makes sense. He's playing on a 1 year, $1.3 million contract because obviously Arizona are paying 37 million after he was cut, and no one was going to pay him 40 million. So he's going to get that money from Arizona, so he gets to play on the vet minimum. Minnesota get a quarterback who will probably win that starting role. Atlanta pick up Tua Tagovailoa, similar setup, 1 year, 1.3 million, because Miami are paying 54 million to him after he was cut. Another interesting one. I'm not sure what he's got left in the tank. It's not a bad roster to be landed into. It's maybe some questionable coaching to be landed into. There's slightly different skill sets between himself and Penix, although I think they're both lefties, aren't they? So at least there's
Yeah.
the consistency in that. And Miami won the Malik Willis sweepstakes at quarterback. He got actually a 3-year, $67.5 million contract, which is cheaper than I was actually expecting him to go for. So
True.
decent job. The only problem is, as I mentioned earlier, Miami have lost a lot of people this offseason, and I don't know what kind of shape a team is going to be around him. Like, if you're going to go and sign the bell of the ball free agent quarterback, albeit for a relatively cheap deal, I don't know how you're going to assess what you've got with him, or whether you need to go look at getting a young quarterback next year when he has nobody to throw to and no one protecting him.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I suppose starting at the top, Vegas went on the mother of all shopping sprees, but getting Linderbaum and paying him over there and getting a load of defensive talent like Pay and Walker and Dean. Now, some of those defensive additions were made during the early free agency period while Max Crosby had been traded, and then obviously subsequently being untraded. But because Vegas just had all of the cap space in the world, they basically were easily able to accommodate that. So all well and well. And in fact, I think it's probably worked out the best for them, because like Max Crosby, who was obviously quite disgruntled, especially given that he was forced to shut down late last season to kind of maintain its value for the trade market, now comes back hyper motivated and ready to prove the rest of the NFL wrong. And basically you get the best, hopefully, version of Max Crosby. And you basically hopefully get the best of all worlds effectively by having this whole scenario. And he finds an external enemy, the Baltimore Ravens, for which to prove himself against, instead of against you and the management, who have been maybe somewhat questionable in your decision making. Obviously, Clint Kubiak coming into that situation, it was probably strange, but he's probably as happy as he can be coming that. And then obviously Kirk Cousins being as a veteran option gives them flexibility if they don't want to throw Mendoza straight into the fire as well. Might as well get ahead that Mendoza's going to be picked number 1 overall by them as their new quarterback of the future. The Hendrickson thing was another kind of thing where Hendrickson obviously was expecting big money. His market didn't reach that kind of high levels he was hoping for, and his money came a bit down, and then Baltimore basically went, oh, maybe we'll take Ray Hendrickson, and then they decide, oh, Crosby's medical issues were a bit more serious than we expected. Sorry, but and Crosby was literally in the Baltimore building when this happened. Like, he was coming in for the medical, he was in the building, but then he wasn't meeting with the GM and stuff, so he suspected something was up. So yeah, bit of a weird situation, and one that doesn't put Baltimore in the great light. And I think it reflects some of the stuff they've done in the 10 or 12 years ago, 20 years ago at this point, in similar free agency situations where they pulled out late of free agency or trade agreements. So that's kind of the big non-quarterback stuff. In terms of the quarterback stuff, like Minnesota for Kyler, I don't know if he's a great scheme fit, but he's definitely an improvement over JJ McCarthy, unless you see major growth from him. And I think you have a competition for JJ. JJ McCarthy needed competition, right? And Kyler is an interesting upside, but he doesn't really do well across the middle of the field. But he can throw to Justin Jefferson. He knows the fuck it, he's down there somewhere type style. So JJ will get Justin Jefferson. Sorry, two JJs there. Justin Jefferson will be able to sort that out for you. And Jordan Addison's not too bad as a wide receiver too either. Did you have a comment there?
No, I was just saying 9.
Yeah,
but yeah, I would say your phrasing is interesting because I don't think JJ McCarthy needs competition. I think Minnesota need competition for JJ McCarthy because
yeah.
I think he's not going to do too well out of this.
Yeah, like I think he's a younger player, so let's not say he's definitely going to be a bust, but he's on a very short leash at this point in this organization, so we'll see. Tua at Atlanta doesn't really excite me much. Like as you said, there is some talent there, though I did think they had like a starting offensive lineman retire, and they had to bring in Jawan Taylor there, so get used to the false starts, Atlanta fans. But it's a bit thin in terms of their their receiver talent, I think. So
yeah.
I think it's fine. They just want to have a settled, boring offense rather than the Penix roller coaster in terms of both his injuries and his actual play.
Yeah, I think they're hoping to rely on their defense in the coming year, I think, and just trying to go, well, we've got a good running back. We don't really need a quarterback. If he can throw it to the tight end, then we're good.
Yeah. So, and then Malik Willis, I think this is a little bit less than I thought. I thought he might get like proper money, but this is like kind of low-level starter.
I was expecting 90 million at least for this.
But he's put into a bad situation. He was signed before they traded away Jalen Waller, which we talked about a second ago, and now he's basically got like Tutu Atwell and people like this as his Malik Washington as like his best receiver. So you'd hope Miami, despite all of the other needs they have, will get someone at receiver in the draft or a couple of people at receiver in the draft to help him out. Yeah. And then just to mention, there was a few other of our highlight free agents that aren't probably worth much analysis. But Jalen Phillips went to Carolina, 4 years, 120 million. Devin Lloyd went to Carolina as well, 3 years, 42 million.
Two good additions there, I think.
Yeah. Mike Evans went to San Francisco for 3 years, 42 million. That's a good place to kind of, if you want to chase the ring. Then Kenneth Walker. Oh, sorry.
Oh, so I was just going to say, it's probably worth noting as well that Mike Evans took less money to go to San Francisco. He wanted out of Tampa Bay, apparently.
Yeah, and then Kenneth Walker ends up going to the Chiefs, 3 years, 43 million. Obviously, kind of replaced the kind of add the hopefully high-level running back that you need in there to assist with slightly injured Patrick Mahomes who had to start the season and hopefully, do his best work in the playoffs like he did for Seattle last year. Yeah. That's, of course, if you make the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll see. Do you not believe? Who knows? Well, on that lovely note then, let's go over and have a look at the fresh batch of rookies coming in this year. So what we'll do first is we'll go position by position and just talk about some of the higher ticket items, I'd say, in each group, right? So quarterback to start, Vegas, Pittsburgh, Jets, Arizona, Cleveland, all people who be looking in this, although Cleveland maybe have too many quarterbacks at the moment. They've also mentioned that they're actually considering having competitions with the sex pest, so who knows. Fernando Mendoza is your number one here, coming out of Indiana, kind of bit like a Matt Ryan type, decisive passer, big body, high accuracy and anticipation. There's some questions maybe about when he gets out of structure, what kind of happens. There's a little bit of arm punting sometimes because he's so strong. He doesn't maybe have to have the perfect mechanics, but this is a draft that has one top end quarterback and then has like one or two guys that people are talking about that are maybe interested in, but I would be amazed if we see two in the first round. Yeah,
I think Mendoza is the highlight by sure. He's going to be the number one overall pick to the Las Vegas Raiders. That's pretty much locked in. Like if that doesn't happen, we're basically in like some kind of separate universe quantum event or something. So you can take that to the bank. As you say, his comparisons are to like older school quarterbacks like Matt Ryan, but he doesn't have elite athleticism, but he does have more athleticism than like a Matt Ryan or like an old school quarterback. He can still do a bit of running. It's just compared to the modern prototype like your Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. He's not at that level. But I think the main thing you see out of him is someone who is a very decisive passer. He gets the ball out of his hands quickly. He's got the prototype build, so edge rushers, if they try and grab arm of him, he can often shake his way out of that, like a Ben Roethlisberger type. Just in that type, not other ways. He is apparently very boring as a person. Good accuracy. The ball always goes where he wants. He's fairly good. He's good, quite good anticipation and processing, especially in terms of pre-snap and kind of aligning things at that level. And I think the big thing that people are excited about if you're going to draft Fernando Mendoza, if you're a Raiders fan, is that his best play happened in the toughest situations. When they were down late in games, that's when he tended to have his biggest plays, and that's why he won a Heisman as the best player in college. That's why his team Indiana were surprise winners of the college championship. leadership, and it's just someone that you want that clutch factor to, like, someone who's solid but has that clutch factor is valuable, but he also has like lots of these traits and the physical build that kind of makes him look like a prototypical, like, old school quarterback.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that kind of like Superman arm like Josh Allen or say Matt Stafford, but it's more than enough to do everything that's required at the NFL level. And I think the one thing he isn't great at, or didn't show much of at the college level, is that if the play breaks down, if the scheming is poor, then he's not someone who's going to improvise his way out of it like a Caleb Williams and kind of make something from nothing. This is someone that you want to put into a good scheme, and he will operate that scheme very effectively for you. And I think given that Vegas Raiders just hired Clint Kubiak, who's obviously coming from a very long lineage of a very specific type of scheme, and obviously just won a Super Bowl with his offense, albeit with a good defense alongside him. I think he's a really good fit for that, so that feels like a good tandem there. But I think if you're looking at his college tape, you will see that pretty much like a lot of college quarterbacks, there's a lot of read play action, there's a lot of like progression reads, which are less complex. So it's probably someone that has the ceiling and has shown enough that they can become like the Tom Brady, Matt Ryan type quarterback, but you're probably not going to get that day one. It's someone you're going to have to build those things into him, but that's pretty much true of any college quarterback at this point.
Yeah.
Once you get past him, sorry, you want to say more about Mendoza?
No, I was going to say, I was just going to say the next guy up is probably Ty Simpson, and just what you were saying there about like winning in the biggest moments or playing his best in that. That's what separates him and Ty Simpson, because there was a lot of discussion about, the start of the season they had very similar numbers and so on, and yes, but Ty Simpson was very much playing to a very stiff structure in what his team wanted from offense, and increasingly as tape was available on that, he wasn't able to adjust. And you can point to the coaching maybe to an extent as well there, but he fell off when they got into the tougher spots, whereas Mendoza kind of stepped up when they got into the tougher spots. And I think that's really what separates the two of them, and why Ty Simpson could sneak into the first round if someone decides, look, we'll trade up to the 32nd or the 30th pick or whatever just to get the 5th-year option on him. But I'd imagine it's more of a round 2 kind of job.
Yeah, and like Alabama, who Ty Simpson played for, like a long powerhouse team in the SEC, you think of quarterbacks like Mac Jones, or Tua, these kind of players who, maybe aren't the most impressive physically, but were in a good scheme and could operate it very effectively. That's kind of what you saw here. He's a one-year starter, but he was at Alabama, I think, 4 years overall. So he was a long-term backup there. So obviously kind of, did the apprenticeship role, and played solidly, particularly at the start of the year. But I think everyone says that the tape as the year went on got worse. So he was worse within games when the pressure was on. He was quite bad under pressure, but also as the year went on and it felt like defensive coordinators at the college level got more tape in him, they were able to break down the scheme, and he looked a lot more uncertain there. And as you say, he's someone who just doesn't have the size or speed or these kind of special characteristics that mean that he could make something out of nothing in those type situations. So I would definitely see him as a project player for a team that's willing to wait a year or two to kind of maybe unlock what could end up being like a Brock Purdy type player. And when you get past those two, you're really getting into like mid-round talents like Nussmeier and Drew Aller are probably your next two guys. They're both guys who had really disappointing 2025s after having good 2024s, and they're kind of similar. Like Nussmeier's a bit undersized, likes throwing the ball downfield, quite aggressive, often gets him into trouble. Think maybe like a worse Baker Mayfield. Whereas Drew Aller's like your kind of prototypical, that's a real quarterback, big, tall, strong, control the ball wherever he wants, but just incredibly erratic in terms of both his accuracy and his read processing of the game. And his 2025 season was a major disappointment at Penn State, and he broke his ankle in the middle of it, even during it, so obviously brought that to a bad end. So this is someone who just, raw tools are there. Maybe you see a Joe Flacco or a Josh Allen, but there's a lot of work to get there. And then I think the last one who's probably intriguing is Cole Payton.
Cole Payton's
who's like
fun.
Yeah, Taysom Hill, at that one level, maybe a Jalen Hurts if you develop him. Just someone who's like a stock, sturdy guy who happens to play quarterback, almost built more like a running back effectively. And he has shown the ability to throw the ball deep at times, despite having very poor mechanics. But he was playing at the FCS level, which is the lower level of college football. So, how much can you take away from his tape there? And obviously you think about some very failed FCS. Who was the 49ers quarterback from a few years ago?
That is... Oh, they traded up for him as well, didn't they?
Yeah,
oh, what's
the bad one. Everyone forgets about him now. He's with the Chargers, whatever.
Yeah.
And very, very raw, but you have maybe a Taysom Hill role from him immediately, so you can have some value in year one. Once you get past that, like Carson Beck, Taylor Green, Blake Lubnick, these are guys who you'd be very surprised to become starters in the NFL. So it's quite a thin quarterback class. It's basically Fernando Mendoza, maybe Ty Simpson could be a starter, and then these other guys, they have potential. They've shown flashes, but their most recent tape for Nussmeier and Aller isn't good, and Payton is more of a kind of Taysom Hill type thing. Maybe
Yeah, yeah.
maybe
Gotcha.
Jalen Hurts if you're very lucky.
Yeah. Into the skill positions, this feels a lot more deep. So you're kind of top of these ones. You'll have the running back Jeremiah Love that everyone's comparing to Bijan Robinson, like meant to be a proper elite, like speed, acceleration, contact balance, can push through tackles, excellent vision. Like he dominated at the college level and is probably one of, if not the best athlete, definitely in this class. But obviously the concern being running backs going high, out of fashion, and the one or two times that it has been done recently haven't gone too well. But again, I wouldn't take anything as being a lesson learned from that Oakland Raiders team of last year, other than don't do what they did. And you've got a lot of wide receivers, like the depth at wide receiver is big. But so Jeremiah Love's your top running back. Jadarian Price is probably your second running back. They were on the same team as well,
Yeah.
and they're both excellent, but like just Jadarian Price didn't see the field as much as Jeremiah Love was so good. But then Jeremiah Love, I think there was one of the games where in the first half he had like 12 touches for 160 yards and two touchdowns. He's like, Grant, sure, let Price have the second half. Sure, let him show off a bit of tape. So he's excellent, and he has less wear on the tires. He's not quite the same athlete. They're slightly different types of runner. But those would be your top running backs, and then wide receiver, it's pick your poison. There's lots of very good options here. Like Carnell Tate, is probably your Chris Olave type deep threat guy. Malachi Lemon, Amon Ra, St. Brown, kind of just excellent route runner. Jordan Tyson is a Terry McLaurin kind of do everything guy. Kenyon Sadiq is the tight end that everyone's looking at as well. Like kind of wondering, would he be the next Trey McBride or whatever? Like just looks incredibly good. And then but it doesn't stop there. You got like Omar Cooper, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Bolton. Like there's loads of guys at wide receiver. So if you're looking in that position, like you'll find value into the second round and maybe even into the third.
Yeah, for sure. It's a wide receiver. This is an incredibly deep class, as you say. There's basically 5, 6 kind of like potential round one wide receivers. Now, because there's so many of them, then one or two of them might fall to the second round. There's maybe a little bit of a drop there, but then there's loads of value in that kind of day two range as well. That we won't have time to even talk about today. And it's kind of, I think the top wide receiver at the moment we consider to be Carnell Tate, because he's probably got the least question marks about him. He's kind of a very effective kind of Z receiver, so an off the line of scrimmage receiver. He's someone who can probably get bunched up by press, but if he's allowed off coverage, then very great as a deep and intermediate threat, someone who's going to get you big plays. He's someone who is very effective at high pointing the ball, so you can kind of give those contested catches, and he's got this kind of nice smooth play that tends to set up DBs and put them into difficulty. So he's someone who can win in man and in zone, so he just feels relatively complete. Now the only problem is that he isn't like your kind of alpha dog wide receiver one, so if you're going to pick him top 10, are you getting like a Megatron or like a Julio Jones? Probably not, but you're probably getting someone maybe like in the Chris Olave type tier, someone who can very effectively be a wide receiver one, but not the kind of prototypical feature face wide receiver. I think that kind of like he has that kind of like doesn't have that elite speed, a bit lean. So maybe think Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, those type of wide receivers. But that's certainly worthy of a wide receiver one in today's game. Mackay Lemon is more of your slot guy. Think Amon-Ra St. Brown or Cooper Kupp, and very highly skilled at that, very good at what he does. He's got a really highly developed game, understands leverage, understands routes, very good if you want to do lots of option routes in your scheme, which obviously was kind of a big thing over the last couple of seasons. And if you want someone who's high volume, just get the ball to him like 5 to 10 times a game. This is someone who can do that. Probably lacks the kind of yak skills you would love ideally for that position, lacks those kind of high-end athleticism traits, so you wonder about the upside. He's a bit smaller, so if he gets locked up in press, which is unlikely in the slot where he'll be, that is something to concern about. So these are all concerns, but you're getting what should be at least a very good player. Whether they're worthy of elite top round one type thing, we'd see, but in this kind of draft class where there isn't that many elite talents, I think it'd be more than worth it. And then Jordan Tyson's probably the most intriguing one, probably the most kind of alpha dog wide receiver one template here, gets comparisons to people like Stephon Diggs or Terry McLaurin, kind of does everything, plays across the formation, gets open consistently, smooth routes, sharp breaks, and he basically consistently on the tape put DBs in tough situations and make them look stupid. And he's happy to get stuck in contested catches. He's even happy to get stuck in the run game if it's required. But he has a lot of injury concerns. He doesn't really have that really elite athleticism to go with all of the other traits. And he had some drops in 2024, his last fully healthy season. So I think Jordan Tyson's one of these guys who's kind of making a late surge up the draft board, because I think people look at him and they go, that's a wide receiver one, right? That's one you can set your watch to. Whereas these other guys, Mackay Lemon, Colonel Tate, Omar Cooper, Concepcion, Bonsados, they all are really good receivers and all possibly worthy of round one consideration, but they don't have that complete package. But Tyson, because of the injury issues and stuff, it's kind of a risk reward type metric there. Outside of those two positions, like running back and tight end are much have much less depth in them. Like Jeremiah Love is by far like the number one guy, and this is someone who will probably be picked in the top 10, top 16 at the most, and he is your Bijan Robinson complete back. He's got elite speed, elite acceleration, elite contact balance, elite vision. He basically just makes big plays happen. And I think you look through his draft profile and it's like, maybe he stutters a little bit too much, but you can kind of feel people reaching to find things that are like not in his game. And even in power situations, he's perfectly capable of running someone over. It's not his game, but he's capable of doing that. And even as a receiver, like he wasn't used that much as a receiver, but he flashed upside there as both a receiver from the backfield and as a slot receiver. So that's something you'll hopefully certainly be able to get more out of in the NFL level. Not the best pass protector, maybe a little bit, not the kind of elite kind of muscle hamster type build, but everything that you want from running back is there. You're kind of just nitpicking at that point. And then Kenyon Sadiq leads the tight ends, basically because he's like an athletic freak. He just looks like a Adonis type tight end prospect. He's big, he's strong, he's fast, and he basically is kind of this flexible receiving tight end. You say Trey McBride as a comparison there. So someone who should, in theory, be very productive. Like he's not a super big tight end, so he's unlikely to be like a Gronk level blocker or anything like that. So maybe not the complete tight end. Maybe on the Travis Kelce, Trey McBride is more you're thinking than Gronk or Kittle. But he's room to grow. He has some room to grow as a route runner, and I think his production doesn't quite line up with the kind of traits, right? Like the production was solid but not amazing, and you're kind of hoping that if you're drafting a tight end in the first round that they're going to be productive off the go. But the upside there is so tantalizing that he will almost certainly be drafted quite high. Once you get past him, Stowers, Clare, Delp, these guys are all like solid. They'll probably have a role in the NFL, but Kenyon Sadiq's the only one that's like special when you look at the tight end position in this draft.
Yeah. Offensive line then next. This is the general consensus around the league is that there's good talent in the first round, but then it falls off very quickly after that. Your top dog here is probably Francis Mauigoa, like big, thick guy, strong anchor. He knows what he's doing. High IQ, doesn't get tricked too often, but also has the physicality to be able to deal with it. He's maybe not the fastest in the world, and there's a couple of questions about some injury stuff. So I believe he has a problem with one of the discs in his back that occasionally flares up, and there's some concerns that if he needed to go and get surgery on that could wipe out a season. But he's probably the top of this. Plays right tackle, might kick inside, but who knows. And outside of him at tackle, you'd be looking at Spencer Fano, Monroe Freeling, and maybe Caden Proctor. Now bear in mind as well, a lot of the guys who are listed at tackle here, a lot of them will kick inside when it gets to the NFL level, because being able to play tackle at college and being able to play tackle the NFL level are quite different prospects. So a lot of these tackles might end up kicking inside, and then you've got guys who are starting kind of on the inside more, like Luan, and I think Bisontis and a few guys like that. So it's interesting. It's kind of offensive linemen are always very hard to explain, because it depends on what you're looking for out of an offensive lineman. Like, are you looking for a pure pass protector? Are you looking for a guy who's going to be a mauling dog running down the line in front of a running back, or tearing open holes? Or do you want more movement? Are you kind of a weird gap spacing kind of system where you want them to be very quick? And if you want a guard who can get across and suddenly be on the side of the left tackle instead. So it's very different things you might be looking from these people, but these guys would all be kind of round one talents.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations that none of them are like standout offensive linemen. I think like some of these will probably get picked in the top 10 or certainly top 16. I think in other drafts they may have fallen to kind of mid first round type of status, but teams are desperate for offensive linemen, so these guys get pushed up a little bit. But they're all highly talented people. Moagin's probably the top one, although with the injury issues, it wouldn't be surprising if he fell from being the top offensive lineman picked. But he's a big, dense, hard to move guy, and he has really good movement for his size, like the kind of dancing bear idea. And he's well capable of getting stuck in. He's got that aggressiveness people like in their offensive linemen, while also being fairly good at diagnosing the play and stuff. But you get into that Zach Martin, Will Campbell discussion about short arms. Like, do you want to have a good tackle, or do you want to have an elite interior offensive lineman, offensive guard? Like, and you kind of look at this guy and you kind of go, would it be better just to move him straight inside and just see if he can be an elite player there, rather than kind of holding on? Obviously, we see in New England that discussion already happening about Will Campbell, who was picked in the first round last year. And Fano is a different type of player. He's more of a finesse, kind of probably zone type running scheme. Does everything right, but doesn't have those elite size and trait and arm length to kind of say, will he be able to win at the NFL on a consistent basis despite his really good technique? So you'll have to keep an eye on that in terms of what you're looking. Are you looking for someone who's like, day one ready to be a good offensive lineman, or are you looking for that kind of upside that Moaga or something like Monroe Freeling has, where they, in Monroe Freeling's case, like he's got everything you want from an OT. Like he's got the size, he's got the arm length, he's really aggressive, and he's got good balance and fluidity and all that kind of stuff, but he's got a lot less experience than these other two guys, and he's because of that there's a lot less consistency in the way that he plays the game. So are you willing to take some pain in year one, year two, but for someone who has that higher upside? And obviously depends where your team is at that moment, right? And then Caden Proctor is similar. He's like a big size guy who's really really good if you want to get downhill and punch people in the face, but may not be as good if you want someone who's facing kind of complex fronts and complex blitzes like from the Minnesota defense, because he hasn't quite shown the ability to do that, and he doesn't have the lateral speed that you would ideally like from a tackle, and you kind of say that maybe he should be interior. And then you kind of look at someone like Iwane in the interior offensive lineman. He's just a big offensive lineman, just an anchor, just like stick that guy there. You have to get around him, and I'll take time, or he will get into you. And I think he's one of the guys that once his hands get on you, you are not getting away from this guy. So the fact that he, maybe lacks a bit of lateral ability and speed to kind of make up for things if he doesn't win, is all made up for the fact that when he does win, he is going to win completely and thoroughly. But there are other offensive linemen who have first round grades. I think Caleb Lomu, Blake Miller, and Iachinor and Basantis are all being projected in some drafts to be first round players. And beyond that, you have guys like Bregnon, Rutledge, and then Connor Liu is the kind of the top-rated pure center, but center is a relatively undervalued position, although with the Linderbaum contract, we'll see how long that lasts.
Not according to the Raiders.
He's probably a day two type guys, but it's like you don't have the kind of Trent Williams replacement immediately coming in. You feel like, but there is a lot of good players who should make your offensive line better. And I said for a league that's desperate for that, I think these guys will be drafted highly and they will add value immediately. It's just a matter of whether you want really quick value or you also want value for that 3, 4, 5, 6 year horizon.
Yeah. Onto the defensive linemen, as we mentioned in the news section, there's not a lot of top end in this group. It's quite concentrated. You've basically got David Bailey and Ruben Bain as your two kind of locked in round one guys, and then after that, like there's guys who could sneak in there, like Kendrick Falk or Akeem Messidor is a very interesting one to me as well, just to see where he lands, because I think that's going to be that's like I could see a team looking at him and deciding, do you know what, he's kind of what I want. He knows what he's doing because he's a little bit older, and just go like let's just take him and lock in, because I think he could be incredibly useful, but there's a bit more risk attached to him. And then the likes of Woods and Parker and so on probably more into round two side of things. Like Bailey and Bain are by a distance the top two in this class, right?
Yeah, I think that's primarily based on their production at the college level. I think there's and having good other profiles. Like David Bailey is your classic kind of speed rusher. Like his first step is elite, and he has that kind of bend, that hip bend that you're always looking for from good edge rushers. And so I think what happens with him most often is that there's loads of tape of him beating offensive linemen immediately and getting to the quarterback immediately, and those can obviously turn into sacks and high value plays. But he isn't someone who just gives up if he does get beaten. He does keep going. It's just a matter of whether he has the kind of the kind of full repertoire of pass rush skills to make something truly productive out of those situations. But that's something that you can teach these guys over time. But he has that special trait that you can work with on day one, and the rest you can hopefully pull together. Like, he's not someone who's great in the run game because he's a bit smaller, so you would have to worry about that at the next level. But even if you're getting like a 2 down pass rusher on key downs, then those are the money downs where pass rushers get the real value from them. So we'll have to see there. And then Ruben Bain's an interesting one. Like, based on his production in Miami, he was a really, really great player. He played all across the line. His play rec is high level. He's got good, quick first step, and he's got this very complete NFL ready pass rush repertoire. And he's someone who also had a high motor and finished plays and was always playing hard. He looks like someone who has the right mental fortitude of an NFL player. He's someone who wants to win every play, has studied the tape really hard, and that shows up on tape. But the big issue is that he doesn't have those athletic freak characteristics that you kind of associate with the best rushers. Like, he's got short arms, and what you hear is that the short arms show up on tape because if offensive linemen get into him, he just can't get out of it. He's just stuck there, and he doesn't have that elite speed that means he can make up that when he misdiagnoses a play. Obviously, he's able to compensate for these at the college level, but you wonder, like, at the NFL level, where everyone gets smarter and everyone is smarter and older, like, will the fact that he was able to beat all these kind of college offensive linemen, will that level up when you get these like higher level guys at the NFL level? So, there's a few missed tackles and stuff like that. So he's someone who out-taught his way to being hyper productive. Can he outthink NFL at the NFL level and be the same productive player? But when someone has this kind of DNA in terms of their mental, like the way they think about the game, got to imagine that they'll be somewhat productive and somewhat valued at the NFL. Oh, yeah. And so he gets comparisons to a guy like Brandon Graham, who's just like a really great servant for the Philadelphia Eagles for like over a decade, rather than your kind of elite blow up, your kind of elite. Wider rushers like TJ Watt or people like that, or Miles Garrett. Once you get past that, there's lots of depth, but there's no those kind of standout guys. Like Celtic Falk is kind of maybe Trayvon Walker, kind of a hybrid defensive lineman edge type player. Long, high motor, kind of gets stuck in there, but lacks those kind of explosive traits that make you think that he'll be a true dominant defensive lineman at the next level. So that's why he might be pushed inside of it, where he can kind of beat some slower stepped off interior offensive lineman versus tackles. Key Messidor, I think he's got everything you'd want from a kind of a pure pass rusher, but not great in the run game. He's a bit older, so you'd worry that maybe he's capped out in terms of what he'll be doing at the next level. And just durability concerns and are also majorly a major red flag for him as well. So got the tape to probably be taken in the first 2 rounds, but a bit of a risk there. Defensive lineman class, pretty weak. Peter Woods is probably the top one there. He's got those kind of traits, that explosiveness, that flexibility for a bigger guy, and those big hands that make you excited, but maybe lacks discipline, and he has a pretty limited pass rush repertoire, and he's someone who got washed out a bit of time. Like, it wasn't for lack of motor, but just because if he was lost, he lost, right? He just didn't have any way to get back into the game, and his production versus his traits wasn't amazing. But there are other guys like TJ Packer, Cassius Howell, Zion Young, or Caden McDonald, who might make it into the first round, but they're all kind of round 1, round 2 type guys, and I think it's very much considered to be a pick your poison or pick what your preference type of class, especially at the edge rusher position. There's all these guys with lots of different types of skills. Like, some are just like solid set the edge guys who will get you a few sacks. Some are pure pass rusher guys who have really well developed pass rush moves but don't have the kind of complete game, especially in the run game. So it just depends what your team wants from that. But these guys will go high because that position, especially edge, is so highly valued at the moment.
Yeah. Second level of defense, so we're looking linebackers and safeties. Top dog here is Arvell Reese. Then you've got Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, the safety. Those will be your top 3 in this area. Arvell Reese is a very interesting prospect because he kind of plays linebacker and edge. So this would be the same kind of route that Micah Parsons would have taken in. There's some question marks about, is his... Are his edge rushing numbers pumped up a little bit from specific games and so on? Like, is he actually that good an edge rusher versus a linebacker? Should you just make him a permanent linebacker, or would he be able to move into being a permanent edge rusher and so on? Like, he's super duper fast. He's quite strong. He's a great run defender. He seems to know what's happening at all times, so he knows exactly where to go as a play develops, which is huge. So I would be leaning towards the playing him kind of full time as a linebacker. Like he sounds to me a lot like someone who you'd be able to put a blue dot on straight away and just have them calling plays and diagnosing stuff. But yeah, it's this thing of he's very good at two things, but does that mean that he's not elite at any one thing? And is that better? Like, because you look at the likes of, say, what the Seahawks were doing on defense last year, and kind of the Swiss Army nature of a lot of these players, so that you don't have to take them off the field. And because Reese can go in coverage as much as he can go like run stuffing or rushing. So like you could leave him on the field and use it in a scheme that lends itself to it to really confuse the offense against you, what's happening and who's got what assignment. But then it's just a question of getting the development right so that you're using him the right way. Sonny Styles is just your more kind of straight up linebacker. He was a former safety who's just, super fast, super strong, can get sideline to tackle people. It's very, very impressive overall player. I'd love to have him at neither of these two guys are getting as far as the Chiefs pick, and I can't think in this day and age you're going to see people trading up for linebackers, with the exception of, I do have a little thing in the back of my head that we could see Jerry Jones trying to trade up to get Arvell Reese, given the whole kind of Micah Parsons comparison, and them kind of not really having what they want in the cupboard defense wise at the moment. And the other top guy would be kind of Caleb Downs, the safety. Would be kind of compared to the likes of Eric Berry, just kind of versatile, very ready to go, elite play recognition, like moves well in coverage, knows where to get himself to try and get into throwing lanes and so on. A good tackler. Like I think with all DBs and sometimes the safeties in particular, because you're more of a security blanket, like a diagnose, dive in to kind of disrupt, and then and provide tackling if the corners fail down. Caleb likes to get in and try and make plays, which can sometimes leave him out of position and cause some downside. But he's head and shoulders the best safety in the class. It's just a question of positional value, because safeties just aren't viewed as quite as important. But like I said, I looked at his tape, I thought Eric Berry, and I've remembered how happy I was when Eric Berry was on my team. I would be happy with any of those guys, to be honest. And there's other guys like Dylan Thiedemann, be another safety. McNeil Warren, and then you got linebackers like Allen, Hill, Rodriguez. I like Jacob Rodriguez. I have him a little bit higher on my numbers. I think actually I have him sneaking into the first round, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Reese is probably the headliner here. We've put him into the linebacker category here, but let's be honest, the reason that he's probably going to be a top 5, top 10 pick is because he has that edge rusher upside. That's something which obviously is highly coveted in the NFL, and in terms of his pure traits, in terms of his complete picture as a physical, in terms of his speed, size, weight type combination, he is a more complete player than either David Bailey or Ruben Bain. And so if you can unlock his pass rush potential, which is somewhat underdeveloped because he was playing linebacker a lot at the college level. You obviously think Micah Parsons and go, this guy will become an elite, one of the highest paid pass rushers in the league, and someone that you can build your entire defensive line strategy around. But as you say, there is a debate because he played most of his time at linebacker, and he was a very, very good linebacker. He has that elite speed, which allows him to make up for the fact that sometimes he had somewhat questionable run fits. And his coverage skills weren't amazing, but he could make up for the sake because of the speed. But if you were going to play him a linebacker, you'd almost think more like a metric like, say, Zach Bond, someone who's a go forward linebacker. They're able to do all the old linebacker things, but they're as effective being used as kind of a chess piece, or someone who's been used in those kind of aggressive blitzes that you see in teams like Philly or Minnesota, for example. And he would probably thrive in such a scheme. So I think with Arvell Reese, the big concern you would have is he going to go to a head coach and defensive coordinator who are going to be able to maximize his flexibility as a chess piece immediately, or they're going to go, no, you're a pass rusher, you go on the edge, you do your pass rush moves, that's your job, or you're a linebacker, you sit in coverage, you blitz when we tell you to blitz, that's it, and just very boring. So if you're a boring DC or head coach, he would not be a good fit for you, and so that's the big concern about someone who's getting picked in the top 5, top 10, because obviously those are the worst teams with the worst coaching on average. I'd say the ones who obviously have new coaches, we'll see there, so that'd be the big concern there. But in terms of the upside, this is probably the highest upside defensive player in this draft, and someone that would be coveted for that reason. Whereas, and just to note, these top 3 guys are all Ohio State. That was fucking ridiculous.
Oh yeah,
but anyway,
not so.
Whereas Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs are the opposite. Say Sonny Styles, if you just want your middle linebacker, the kind of classic green dot linebacker. This guy has everything. He's got size, he's got speed, he's got coverage skills from when he was a safety. He's shown himself to be an effective sideline to sideline tackler in terms of fitting in the run game and in the coverage game as well. So, this is someone who obviously hasn't quite reached their ceiling because they made that conversion from safety to linebacker. But everything that, like, if you see the line as a linebacker going up at that rate, you kind of go, this could be Fred Warner at the next level. So you're going to pick this guy high. And I think there'll be certain head coaches, especially if they're from a defensive coordinator position, they'll go, this guy is what I need as the first step to build an elite defense, because I can build the entire room around this guy like a Bobby Wagner or a Luke Kuechly type linebacker. So I imagine he'll be taken high. It's just about positional value of a linebacker versus other positions, just cash-wise. As was the biggest criticism. And Caleb Downs, similarly at safety, this guy's just looks like a NFL ready safety. I get a lot of comparisons to Jalen Petre, for example, is another comparison alongside Eric Berry. Just does everything, elite play rack, good in the pass, good in the run game, disciplined and fluid in coverage, and does the tackling and stuff like that. Like, bit of gambling, because I think this is a guy who obviously, because he was the best player in the defensive backfield, was given a bit more freedom to try things, and occasionally that caught out, but obviously you're getting experience there that other more limited safeties weren't getting, and hasn't really been played as a true free safety. So if that's a worry in your scheme, maybe something to keep an eye on. But obviously the current NFL is all about two safety or even three safety type schemes, so that should be fine. But basically, he's not the biggest athletic freak, so if you put him on to like an athletic freak tight end like Kenyon Sadiq or your Trey McBrides, maybe you don't want to put him one-on-one if you can avoid it. But basically ready to slot into an NFL defense and be an effective contributor, Pro Bowl type contributor from day one, and that's highly valuable. And then you say like Dylan Tiedemann and Emmanuel Warren are both good safeties in their own way. I think Dylan Tiedemann kind of sees maybe like a one high type guy, and Emmanuel Warren's probably your best kind of like downfield type safety if you're talking about like classic safety prototypes. So the both of things, and I think McNeil Warren has like the peanut touchdown, like the kind of you'll get plenty of the forced fumbles from him, so that's always got a little bit of value there. Maybe lacks the high upside of the kind of these other three guys, but there's plenty of depth there, and I think you will see in the first 2 days a lot of safety and linebacker talent come off the board.
Yeah, and then finally to your kind of third level, your cornerbacks, we've got a fairly decent stack of these, although I think most of them have little small knocks on them in one or two ways, but that's always going to be the case. Mansour Delane is probably the top guy coming out of LSU, like a proper just cornerback one, like spent the year or two there mirroring wide receiver ones, very happy to get into press, happy to play in zone, like goes ball hawking, has the athleticism to be able to do that. He's maybe a little skinny for the NFL level, but you can, all these guys, you can get them into a weight program and get them a little bit bigger. Maybe a little bit too much hand fighting. Who knows? That could cause some problems at the level.
That's a very common criticism, because the college game is a bit more
they let
open about letting.
They let them go a little bit more there. But yeah, Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee would be the other kind of top guy in here. So he's pure kind of ball hawk type thing, like really good spatial awareness on the field, knows what's going on, is able to recognize plays and figure out what kind of alleyways he needs to get into to kind of where the ball is likely to be coming out. He's good movement, good fluidity, and so on. But he's had some injury concerns. So he had a major injury to the ACL in 2025, and then I believe we were talking just before we got on that he has a knee injury as well that's kind of surfaced up, and that's kind of causing some concern, because that could also.
That's very recent, so we don't have the full coverage, but it was out there as a insider report, so that's maybe people are trying to reduce his value, late in the day by leaking it, or maybe there's something genuine there. We don't have that kind of insider information to distinguish between those two. But someone will go in the first round, I think, unless he's literally going to have to be out for the first year. He's just that talented. Yeah,
and then you've got the likes of Terrell, Hood, and Johnson, who might also be in that first round thing. So you've got kind of, a press man guy in Terrell, really. Press man was as well for Hood. He's kind of good, strong, kind of like to knock guys off at the line, and then Chris Johnson's kind of nice, just all round guy. Maybe not quite the athleticism, maybe not quite the size you'd want for a number one corner, but would definitely be plug and play contributors probably from the get go.
Yeah, like Delane is probably considered to be the first cornerback off the board. As I said, Jermod McCoy was kind of getting up there, it felt like, but with the reignition of the injury concerns, maybe that'll drop him a little bit back into the mid-first round. Delane, kind of getting consideration with guys like Quinyon Mitchell, but you say kind of does everything well, good in man coverage, mirrors the wide receiver quite well. He's happy to get involved in press. He's good as a ball hawk in zone. So just kind of complete. He doesn't have the elite kind of like muscle build or whatever like that to perhaps like go against the kind of big dominant type like DK Metcalf type wide receivers, but more than enough for the vast majority of the NFL. And as I say, like being handsy is basically a college thing. You'd find very few that don't have that on their resume. And if he does like lose the IQ game or the play rec game, he can occasionally be baited, but that's a very rare thing. And taking those risks is part of being a high level cornerback in the first place, because you have to predict what's going to happen in the future. Occasionally you're going to be wrong. Jamal McCoy's more of your kind of like looks like your kind of prototypical cornerback, someone who looks like they can beat you in man, has good spatial awareness and stuff like that, and good fluidity overall. So outside the injury concern, he probably would be the top cornerback, but the injury concern probably means him a little bit lower. And then Terrell, he's the brother of AJ Terrell, so it gets a comparison to him basically. Who's just a good and press, someone who's more than happy to get stuck in wide receivers, make their life difficult at all times, effectively, and happy to get involved as a ball hawk in zone schemes and stuff like that. He's a bit smaller, I think, like his brother. So contested catches he might fail on. He can get grabby when he loses rights, and he's a middling tacker and run support, but should be a very solid day one, day two type pick. Colton Hood, press man cornerback, loves to get involved in bullying wide receivers and kind of making their life very difficult, but has the kind of fluidity and mirroring skills that you need to be a high level cornerback. Not great as a run defender, limited, and he's probably the least experienced of these guys. So you are projecting a little bit that you'll turn this guy into someone worthy of the kind of high level pick. But I think given his upside, wouldn't be surprised if he goes above someone like Terrell, just because NFL is all about potential to a certain extent. Like Chris Johnson's probably the late riser in this draft class at the cornerback position. Someone who's kind of moved into first round consideration after mostly considered like a day two guy. Played at a lower level in San Diego State, a little bit smaller, but has everything that you want, and played all across the defensive backfield for San Diego State, was a leader in that team, and he has good mirror skills, good discipline, a ball hawk, and basically does everything. And I think he's got some comparisons to guys like Trent McDuffie, for example. So like they don't have the big size, but they more than make up for it by being so flexible and being so willing to get all up in your grill. And I think among these ones, he's actually considered to be one of the more kind of disciplined cornerbacks in terms of not getting flags and not being too grabby, as it were. So comparisons to guys like Trent McDuffie, Tyrone Murphy, and beyond that, some guys might go day two, like Brandon Cisse, Angelo Pods, Traden Stukes, but it's fairly deep day two, but it's not a class that's got a headline by kind of your Jalen Ramsey elite cornerback type guys. These are all good players, but maybe not that elite size. Jamal McCoy's the closest, but injury concerns will kind of knock him down a little bit.
Yeah. Now that we've given you the basis of all that, let's do our incredibly accurate and normally definitely correct mock draft. So,
world famous.
Up first, the Raiders. Fernando Mendoza. Like, there's no real questions on that one. There's not, like, the first couple of this, the first five are really locked out. I think it's just maybe one or two of them might move around. So Mendoza, the Raiders, they need a QB. He's the best QB in the thing. Makes sense. I'm sure some people will be ringing them about maybe taking that, but given it's meant to be a better quarterback class next year, I think, like the Jets have a bunch of picks already next year. They'll hold their powder. Jets up next. I have them going Arvell Reese, the linebacker, because I think he's the best player for the defensive side anyway, and that's kind of what they need. You've gone with David Bailey, the edge rusher.
Yeah, so I think Arvell Reese has kind of been the most common pick here in consensus board across mock drafts. David Bailey's kind of been a late surger. I think it just comes down to, I get the sense that some people are picking him because, like, I don't really want Arvell Reese to go to, like, the end of the Aaron Glenn tenure, because that's such a disaster already. It feels like it's not going to go on longer. So maybe just give them a player where you know exactly what they are. They're a very effective speed rusher. Put them out there, do their job, and kind of not put someone like Arvell Reese, who, as I said, is a more complex player to figure out, much higher upside, but much more complex to figure out exactly what you have, and just let another team figure that out. Maybe a team that's better coached or has a new head coach who can figure it out. Arvell Reese or David Bailey, almost certainly going to be one of those two guys based on the mock drafts.
Yeah, and then we just swap on the next one. This is the thing, everything you've said, I feel the exact same way about the Cardinals. I don't think the Cardinals know what to do with Arvell Reese either.
Yeah.
But, like, so look, I've gone linebacker, edge, you've gone edge, linebacker, but, like, those are your top three. Titans, we're all in agreement. Running back Jeremiah Love, best player in the draft, I think, or best athlete in the draft. I like it as a fit for the Titans. I think helps out the young quarterback and so on. Although I have heard there's growing rumors that they're not going in that direction, which is interesting. But I think it makes sense to me. Like, just take him. Like, why not? If he's the best player, just do it.
Yeah,
Giants.
like I think it's one of those ones where they're moving stadium soon. The fans are a bit depressed. Give them a fancy shiny toy and figure out the more boring positions and later things. In positional value, it would make sense to go with like a tackle because they have their free agent tackle didn't work out from a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Really, take a tackle, take a defensive elite defensive player, but you need something to sell. Take it something to get the fans excited. And Jeremiah Love is someone get you excited in the off season certainly. Whether you'll be excited during the season because the run game is so dependent on the offensive line, which is okay. It's not bad in Tennessee, but it's only okay. It's a different question. But I don't know. You want to get the fans jumped up, and I don't know if Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs does the same thing.
No. The only one that might do the same thing would be if they just went Carnell Tate and got the wide receiver or something like that. But I like Jeremiah
Definitely an
Love
option.
more for that spot. Giants up next. We've both got them going for the linebacker Sonny Styles. Makes sense. Defense. Well, I suppose not specifically, but more defensive inclined head coach there now, and he's making the picks. And I think Sonny Styles, like I said, is just a perfect plug and play. Like the Ravens back in the day liked having their their main guy linebacker. Whatever about them off the field, they wanted like a top end linebacker on the field. So
Yeah, and they were willing to trade draft those guys in the first round or trade first round picks for
Mhm.
high level linebacker play. So unique opportunity to get that kind of blue dot guy straight in and hopefully pull that defense together in the new Harbaugh era. Yeah.
First of two Browns picks here now. So I have them going wide receiver in Carnell Tate. You have them going offensive tackle in Francis Mayoga. I think both of these make sense to them. I think we're basically swip swapping where I have them going wide receiver and later on I have them going offensive tackle. You have them going tackle and later on going wide receiver. But those are two needs and two ones they can fill here. Uh, like
Yeah, I think it depends on what you see as the horizon for the team. I know they hired a new head coach and stuff like that, but does this new head coach feel like a long term solution? Not really to
no.
me. So if you're thinking like 3, 4, 5 years ahead of time, and obviously the quarterback position's going to be a mess this year, almost certainly. Get the tackle in who will be useful no matter what going forward, or a good offensive lineman no matter what going forward is my perspective. But like getting the exciting wide receiver, especially after Jerry Jeudy was very unimpressive this year, would make sense and maybe get the fans a bit more hyped up. So it depends who's in control of this entire ship is a big question there. And the boring kind of the boring kind of like foundation setting pick or the kind of get the fans excited pick, I can see them going either way.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think the right call would be to go look at the offensive line, but I don't think they're going to make the right decision. I think they're going to go, ooh, Carnell Tate, he's real good, and I think he's from just up the road. I think he's a relatively local-ish chap, but yeah. Commanders are up next. We've both got them going backfield just in different directions. So I have them taking the top cornerback, Mansour Delane. You have them taking the top safety, Caleb Downs. Um, yeah, both
Yeah,
of
this
these
is
make sense to me, but
the defense was a bit of a disaster last year, so I just went for defensive BPA. And
yeah.
Caleb Downs is just someone who can make like what is a very older defense and hopefully replace some of those older guys by getting in the next rate of guys and getting in guys like the Ohio State guys like Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles will really just help kind of set the next tenure of this Washington defense. Which obviously there is a world where they want to get more stuff for the quarterback and kind of get him back on the right track. But I think defense will be a focus there for Dan because I think that's always been that's obviously his first love as well.
Yeah. Saints up next, and we're in agreement on this one. They are very happy that Ruben Bain has fallen to them, so they get the second best edge rusher in the class, albeit as we mentioned with some kind of arm length issues or questions and so on. So they're gonna hop on that and start beefing up their pass rush. Makes sense to me. Chiefs next. I found this one a little bit difficult because I think they would have liked to have seen either Bailey or Bain fall to them, given that they're gone at this stage. I think they go offensive tackle. I have Magoa on my board still available. As the Browns picked him in yours, you're going with Spencer Fano. I
Yeah,
don't
like
love an
no,
offensive tackle here, if I'm honest. I don't love it, but I also think it's increasingly feeling like that's what they might do. Particularly on my board anyway, I've got the Mansour Delane is gone, so they would go quarter. The only thing that on my board I might consider would be I was thinking about safety Caleb Downs, but then I was kind of going, well, that then hamstrings kind of the the second pick and the other pick afterwards if you take a safety there rather than a corner or
Yeah,
whatever.
like
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like if there's one of the blue chip guys like Caleb Downs or like Sonny Styles or even Ruben Bain fell to you, I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to go in that direction. I think
Oh,
Ruben Bain would be
100%. I
a
think they
likely
will.
pick for
Yeah.
them. But I think most of those guys are off the board for us here. And so I think, obviously it's a bit of a question whether they need, like obviously the left tackle that they picked last year, Simmons, health issues. Are you fully willing to go all in on him? You are at the
Yeah.
moment. You have the guy that you picked up from San Francisco last year, kind of fitting in as a right tackle after getting rid of Jawan Taylor. Are you fully happy with that guy being
No,
there?
no, no.
I
Like
think one of your,
he's better as a swing tackle kind of because he can play
yeah.
both sides. But like if you could get a Mauga or maybe a Fano here, like yeah, like you'd take it and try and lock up that.
And one of your guard positions is also a big question. So
Mm.
like I think you're kind of going after last year. You're reacting to the fact what happened with Patrick Mahomes. He was like scrambling a lot and obviously got injured in the end. Like, is the way to build the foundation the boring way along the lines, or do you want to go into the fancy positions effectively first there? Because obviously they have a big need at cornerback now after trading away Trent McDuffie. So do you pick them there? But obviously, so much of that scheme is built around how successful they've been about developing cornerbacks. So are you willing to invest first round capital to do that when you think you can develop guys later? So I feel like they'll go in the trenches
Yeah.
in defensive or offensive, in my opinion.
I
But
think
they might go cornerback if they are worried about it.
I think what they want is they want one of Bailey or Bain to fall to them here. That's what they want, and I think if one of them aren't there, I don't think they're gonna go and jump on Messidor. I think they'd be trying to trade back down, maybe find one of the teams who are looking more like maybe even convince the Giants to jump up or one of the more offensive line hungry teams, and because I think they'd be happy with a lower down offensive lineman and then pick up like Akeem Messidor or whatever a bit further down, because I think the concern is you won't get much for the defensive line slash pass rush at 29, but you
Which is
might.
why I think with the
Yeah.
way the board is falling, according to most mock drafts and our mock drafts, like I think offensive line is probably where the value is kicking in here, and you have like this clutch of like kind of 10 to 20 position type offensive lineman, and it's just about picking your flavor there. You want someone who can contribute straight away, like Fano, or someone a bit more upside, like Maga or what's his name, Freeling. So like I picked Fano because he's ready to go and this is a win now team. But he's a bit more finesse, so I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to go with some more aggressive, like even Freeling, who's a lot less experienced but has that kind of big size that they might be looking for, like
Yeah.
a bit more upside. I think they would, like the Chiefs have been willing to invest in that in the past.
So the Giants were
All
up
right.
next on their second pick that they got in the trade. So this is Caleb Downs for me because he's still on the board. And again, that's where I was like, maybe the Chiefs would just go with him if he was there, but I don't know. You've gone wide receiver Carnell Tate for them, which makes sense. Like they need to add some weapons into that room as well. I think.
Yeah, I could, like they want to build around the young quarterback and stuff like that.
I'd be
And they already have
amazed if
the
Tate gets down to 10 though. I think someone
Yeah.
would hop in ahead.
And even Jordan Tyson, who is the consensus mock draft, we're using mock draft database for this stuff. But he's even considered now to be a top 10 type guy. But if someone like this falls, I imagine the Giants will just take it. Like we just need lots of everything. So an
Yeah.
exciting wide receiver while we're already filled in one of our big defensive needs, we'll do that. But if another one of these kind of high level defensive guys was to fall, like Ruben Bain, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants go all in on the defense either in that case. But
Yeah.
I think Jordan Tyson ends up being the consensus pick in this case because he's ramping up boards very quickly. So
Yeah.
a weapon is probably the exciting pick, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went defense here either if a good player is available.
We got Dolphins next, so that's where I have Jordan Tyson going. You've got Mansour Delane, the cornerback, going there. Again, I think someone's jumping in ahead if that cornerback is fallen all the way down to 11. But I think we're in lockstep on the needs here because the Dolphins also have two picks, and you've gone cornerback, then you've gone wide receiver at their later pick. I've gone wide receiver now and cornerback at the later
And
spot.
to be honest, like the Dolphins have so many needs, basically in nearly every position, that they could pretty much go BPA, and they obviously aren't a team that's expecting to compete in 2026. So I think those are the exciting positions and where the value has fallen in this particular draft. But again, they're another team that if one of these guys is falling that we expect to go high, I wouldn't be surprised if they jumped in and just took the best players that came into it.
Cowboys up next. We've gone cornerback, Jermad McCoy, second cornerback on our lists. It makes sense. I do think that they would be interested in trying to get a bit of edge rush kind of job here, a bit of defensive line help, but I don't. I think it might be too expensive for them to move up to try and get some of the premier guys, unless one of them starts to fall, and then they kind of convince the commanders to trade with them or something like that. But yeah, I think the way this board is falling, top cornerback for them, or one of the top cornerbacks for them makes sense. Rams up next. I've given them. Uh, Makai Lemon because yeah he's a wide receiver that just the way he plays fits incredibly well with the system that they have in place there. Obviously they're in a very much win now mode, like you saw with them with the trades they've made, and they know that it's 1 maybe 2 years max left with their current quarterback. So I think giving them a weapon there, and also maybe a possible backstop if certain wide receivers don't make it back out of rehab. We'll see. You've gone offensive tackle with Monroe Freeling. That makes sense to me as well. And like we saw what happened whenever they maybe don't have the utmost faith in their offensive line at the moment. We saw what happened whenever free rushers get through and start hitting an old man behind them. So bringing in a quality offensive tackle and keeping him upright and protecting him, like these are both win now picks. They're just in slightly different directions.
Yeah, like I think that the lot of the wide receiver projecting, not for yourself, but for I think across the board is probably obviously some overreactions to Puka Nakua stuff. I think that's overblown for now. I think, and if they had to rely on Devontae Adams as their top guy, I think they'd be willing to live with that. So I think they're a bit more worried about what happened on the offensive line last year. They have a bit of a lack of depth there, and I think this is also succession planning. It's much easier to draft an offensive lineman, find a spot for them, and then obviously kind of fill in the veterans who age out there via the draft, and wide receiver where options in the in the trade pool or the free agency pool tends to be a little bit easier. So I've got for Freeling, who's the higher upside guy, maybe not the guy who would be immediately making your offensive lineman 1,000 times better, but who has, if you're taking 2 or 3 years ahead of time, could be the next phase of the round, but who is good enough and has those kind of high elite traits that if you're a guy like Sean McVay, you're like, I can get good productive play out of them straight away as well. Yeah. So yeah, Rams, I think the offense will probably be the pick here, unless a good guy falls down, because I think that they want to keep Matt Stafford up there, and that is the engine of this team at the moment.
Yeah, Ravens up next. They go for the top interior offensive lineman in Johan, so that makes sense. Like he's the best interior guy there. They obviously lost their center. They kind of want to lock up that inside of the line. There's a lot of talk about kind of what they're going to do that's different now. They've changed management, and I think they love these kind of blue chip kind of plug in and not have to worry about it in these types of positions. So that just makes an awful lot of sense. We have the Bucks as well. We've got Akeem Messidor coming in here. They need edge rush help. That makes sense. I think maybe they could look at a wide receiver here, given the losses in the off season. But I think restocking at edge is really where they need to go. So Messidor.
Yeah, a lot of people saying he's a very Todd Bowles type player. So I think that's why he's getting a lot of connection with Buccaneers.
Fair enough. Jets up again, with both of us giving them a defensive piece with the first pick. With their second pick, we're both going offense. I'm giving them wide receiver Casey Concepcion because I really like saying his name, and he's quite a fun player. I think he'd fit in well there, given they've already kind of got their. They've got a WR1 already. I think Concepcion is nice and flexible, can play multiple roles for them and so on. You've gone with Jordan Tyson.
Yeah, so I think wide receiver is a fairly popular pick for the Jets. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they went BPA at defense instead, because that's really where the problems emerged. I know they invested a lot in free agency, but it still feels like the talent infusion is probably more needed on the other end. But I think people like the idea of the Jets investing a bit more and getting that offense going a bit further than it currently is at the wide receiver. Obviously, they're very reliant on one guy at the moment. So yeah, I don't mind. Like I think the mock draft consensus says Omar Cooper is the best available wide receiver. So yeah, if a good wide receiver drops this far, why not take them?
Yeah, Lions up next. They need offensive line help, so I've given them Freeling. You've given them Proctor. Like I said, it's just they just need line help. So it's a whoever we think would fit best with them at that point.
Yeah.
Where you're.
But this is one of the teams where I feel like like a Spencer Fano, if he fell, I wouldn't see him because he's more of a finesse guy. They want big, brutish guys, and thankfully there are a fair few of these in the first round type range, including both the guys we talk about here, Braden Proctor and Monroe Freeling. But expect them to be a big, aggressive, plays through the whistle type guy. If whoever falls that far to the Lions will probably end up being picked up there at the defensive line move.
Yeah, Vikings go safety with Dylan Thinaman. Position of need for them. Just makes sense. I think the consensus
Yeah,
have it on the
it's a
same one
bit
as
too
well.
neat because like Harrison Smith, he hasn't officially retired, but is effectively retired, and
Mm,
they're like, okay, bring in the next Harrison Smith to be the kind of centerpiece of the defensive backfield there for the next 10 years.
yeah. Panthers up next. I've gone offensive tackle with Spencer Fano because I think they're just getting value at this point with him down this far, and always a solid investment. You've gone edge rusher in Kendrick Falk. I think they can use help there as well. My rationale for going this direction rather than D-line or edge is just kind of they picked some guys up in free agency that I think are already helping on that side. Whereas I think their line was okay, but not phenomenal last year, and they could do with a little bit more there. But I think either of these will immediately help the guys out. So yeah,
Yeah, I think that the consensus has them taking Kenyon Sadiq. I don't think they need excite. I think they're a team that still needs to keep building the boring bits, the trenches and stuff like that. And I
yeah,
think
I'd
these are
agree.
kind of both the best offensive linemen slash defensive linemen available. And that's basically how I picked them in their case. Yeah.
Yeah, Cowboys. I've gone defensive line with Kendrick Falk here, just because, like I said, I think the Cowboys need defensive line help. I think they'd like to be one of the bigger names, but I think they get value here at this point, and that'd be a cornerback one and a pass rusher coming in for them. So I think
And the exact opposite for me. Like if the Panthers are a team that goes boring, both in the sense they should and that they are likely to, in my opinion. The Cowboys are the opposite, and they're like Kenyon Sadiq, like the Adonis looking thing, and Jerry Jones, like look at that guy, look at him, let's draft him, come on guys. So I've gone Cowboys do the exciting, maybe not the smartest pick, and they stop Kenyon Sadiq's fall in this particular draft at number 20.
yeah. Cowboys up next. I've gone Steelers up next. I've gone offensive tackle Monroe Freeling for them, just because look, I think we still don't know exactly what's happening quarterback there. If they want that run game to get going, their offensive line was dog shit last year. They just need to get more bodies in there. Like whoever they're bringing in, even if it's for next year, bring in Freeling, get him up to speed, have a good line in front of your young quarterback next year. You've gone to give weapons to them, so you've gone Mackay Lemon wide receiver for them.
Yeah, succession planning, like DK Metcalf and Pittman still have tread and a tire in theory, but you kind of want to build the next one. And Mackay Lemon as a kind of slot guy is quite different. Like he's somewhat like Pittman, but he's kind of a different type of slot receiver.
Mm.
Now, obviously, this is the first position where some people are suggesting Ty Simpson might get into the first round, but the expectation at the moment is still that Aaron Rodgers is coming back to this team. So I didn't really know where to go with the Steelers fully, but I ended up with Lemon because he's kind of BPA, and I think it would make sense to kind of just keep that offense somewhat exciting, so it could be a functional complement to the defense.
Yeah, Chargers up next. We've both gone defensive line, and we've both gone Peter Woods because they need their defense to do a little bit more. It
Yeah.
was not good last year.
Another trench team, like
Yeah,
the offensive line would be the interior offensive lineman. If any of those dropped, where do you go at this point?
yeah,
Albeit, a tackle might be needed given how injury prone they are. But defensive line feels like the obvious one given the relative depth at those positions at this
mm.
point.
Eagles up next. We've both gone with offensive tackles here. I've gone with Proctor. You've gone with Etienne. Yeah, like again, makes sense. They need to continue to build out that line. It's getting older. It's losing pieces. It's not what it was. They might be able to successfully run the tush push again if they get enough offensive linemen in there. We'll see. But yeah, like it's a trench time for them. Um, Browns up next. Like I mentioned, we've just gone inverse. So I've gone offensive line now for them with H&R having them pick up Carnell Tate earlier on. You've gone with Omar Cooper Jr., the wide receiver here, with them having gone offensive tackle earlier on in the draft. So same rationales, I suppose, just different. Do you think Cooper is a particularly good fit there, or is it just kind of BPA?
I think it's BPA. I think
Mm.
given that they have basically no receivers that I would trust, that you don't, they will fit wherever they will fit because there's no one to basically replace. Like Jerry Judy's their wide receiver one, I think still.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I think Cooper's the best available at this point. But I think in the consensus mock draft, Casey Concepcion has fallen this far, so that feels maybe like a slightly more exciting version of this pick. Of
Yeah,
going for wide
it
receiver.
definitely is. Bears up next. We've both gone for safety. Emmanuel McNeil Warren. Yeah, like I think just he's fallen this far. That's a position of need for them. Probably a little bit more of a definite kind of like a little bit ahead of what like they'd be getting at cornerback at this point. And I think that's just kind of the area they need to focus in on.
Yeah, and what was I saying earlier on that this guy is great at the peanut punch, and obviously
Mm,
Charles Tillman is the original peanut puncher. So why not get in his new age equivalent?
yeah. We've got a worrying amount of picks that we fully agree on down the bottom here as
I
well.
think this more reflects that, there's just certain picks that don't really have a good one, so you kind of go, well, this is what people are saying. Why as
Yeah,
well, just like,
I
why
got
not?
yeah, we've got Bills going Caden McDonald defensive lineman because yeah, look, the Bills they are crying out for they need a wide receiver one and they need like pass rush, and you're not getting your wide receiver one down here at the moment on either of our boards because and also I suppose they're paying that kind of money to their supposed wide receiver one that they traded for, I suppose. But
Yeah, and the next tier of edge rushers would probably also be in the running, like TJ Parker, Cassius Howell, or Zion Young even.
mm,
But in this case, we went for the
yeah,
defensive lineman, Caden McDonald, instead. But
I
yeah,
think
defensive line,
I think
almost
that,
certainly. Yeah,
yeah, it'll be the defensive line. I think again this is a perfect spot for. Well, they'll be looking to actively trade back, I think, because
yeah,
they have a lot of needs, and there's a bunch of guys in the next like 30 guys that they'd like. So if they could swap this for, 2 picks in the next 35 picks, I think they'd be very happy. 49ers up next. I've given them the linebacker Rodriguez because I think, they love linebackers there. I think they need. We saw what happened last year with like, they did well with a bunch of injured people. And they just didn't have the depth at it anymore. And Fred Warner is still good, but he's getting older. You need to bring in some of these guys, and putting him out there beside him would be great. Get him to learn from him, and I just think it's a nice fit for me. You've gone offensive tackle with Caleb Lomu. Obviously the 49ers in need of line help. Everyone is. You need
yeah. This is
a succession plan for Trent Williams because he's still good, but he is like 40 now.
Yeah, but I think it'll depend. Are the 49ers like a win now team? Would they pick Lomu in that case, or would they go for someone more exciting or at a position of maybe greater need? But I've gone for Lomu in this case. As I said, kind of obviously this was like Trent Williams extension news only came in the last couple of days, so maybe mock drafts are catching up to that news. But Trent Williams is well on at this point, so you should be doing succession planning if you can. And Lomu is one of those bigger, aggressive kind of I think Samoan type guys, so potentially could have value interior if needed in his first couple of years as well.
Yeah. Texans, their line was terrible last year, so let's get some help there. I've gone interior and give them Basantis. You've gone tackle and give them Miller. But again, Miller could kick inside if needs be. I think they just need to draft like 4 linemen, so no harm.
Yeah, like please.
Chiefs up next. I've had Kenyon Sadiq fall this far, which to be honest, he's probably not falling this far. I think I was just like, man, it'd be real nice to get the successor to Kelsey on the team with Kelsey to learn with him for a year. But yeah,
I think every mock draft you're getting to a certain point, you're like, okay, there's certain gaps left. Just put BPA in there, and yeah, I think Kenyon Sadiq, if he got this far,
oh yeah,
will be
yeah.
very tempting.
Well, this is the thing is like there's. I was very close to having the Bills thing. I was like, well, actually, the Bills already have like 2 tight ends, maybe not
Yeah.
quite at that level, but like they've got guys locked in their roster. 49ers, like they're not succession planning yet on that. Texans, they need line. Like Bears, they don't need a tight end. Browns, not really, maybe, but like they have other needs. Like it's just kind of he just started to fall and he got this far. I'd imagine what would actually happen is if he was falling this far, someone would just go in and trade with. There's a bunch of teams just before this that would be happy to trade down. Like I said, like the Bills, prime example. I'm sure the Bills would trade up and then it would double up as the Chiefs not getting the tight end. So, but you've got them going with cornerback Chris Johnson. I think that makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah,
I
and I think
think
a lot of
cornerback is
the
a need.
mock drafts are giving them a cornerback, but I
Yeah.
think that's like, will they be willing to invest? Like the top one, certainly big question about that. You get into the bottom of the first round. This is a good spot to be getting some of these kind of second tier
Yeah,
cornerbacks.
and get the extra year. So a first round pick in the NFL, they're under contract for 1 additional year versus a later round pick. So it means you control their rights for longer. And given the
and then
Chiefs' tendency to not give out second contracts to cornerbacks, if they wanted to get a guy to develop up and be there for a bit, it makes sense to hold his rights for an extra year.
yeah, and Chris Johnson, as I said, was a flexible player, so you can find a slot for him. He might be in the slot. He could play outside for you initially, and it's obviously for a position in flux. It's nice to have that guy who has flexibility, so you're not being like forced to play him in a certain position and kind of making it difficult to move all the other pieces around that time.
Yeah. Dolphins up next. I've gone with cornerback Colton Hood. You've gone with wide receiver Casey Concepcion. Like I said, we did the inverse at their earlier pick. I had them go wide receiver, you had them go cornerback, and then we're just swapping down here. It's just
Yeah,
a matter of
and
what order they go in.
And Concepcion, like I know they're a new regime, but if we talk about what the Dolphins have been for the last 5 years, Concepcion feels very Dolphinsy, right? So
Yeah.
just kind of explosive playmaker type guy.
I get you. Patriots up next. We've both gone edge, just in different directions. I've gone Cassius Hell. You've gone TJ Parker. I could see them going offensive line if there's someone here, given They're already talking about kicking their first round tackle from last year to the inside. They might just have to roll the dice on another
Well,
tackle as well, but I'm not sure
the
you're
real
getting a tackle down here at 31.
the real question is, do you think they'll have to give up 31 for AJ Brown?
I'm unsure. I'm wondering if they're trying to play it out to see could they do it for a second instead. But
I think they're holding out as well, but don't be surprised if this ends up being an Eagles pick
yeah,
straight up for AJ Brown or something like that.
yeah,
And in terms of if they do keep their pick, then I think Cassius Howell is like a pure pass rusher, very developed pass rush repertoire. So if they're more worried about their loss of pass rush production, I'm sure they'll get him more involved. TJ Parker's more of your edge setting, boring defensive edge lineman. So I felt he was a bit more Patriotsy or kind of boring, so I ended up going for him. But at this point, there's kind of a tier of pass rushers who are all kind of similarly ranked to they could definitely go for if they wanted to improve that position.
and Seahawks at 32, who will almost certainly trade out of the pick as someone wants to come up and grab what's your
Ty
man's
Simpson
name?
or something like that.
Yeah, Ty Simpson and get the extra year of it. But I've gone with Jadarian Price, the second running back in this draft, who I think is a very good one. He's a big, more of a power guy. I think he'd fit really well, obviously with the loss of your running back from last year. I think it makes sense. I think also given wanting to maybe not have to pay that position too much, getting one in the first round so you get the extra year of control of the contract makes sense to me. You've got them going cornerback. I could also see that they need additional bodies there. They love having the rotation. Um, I think there's a lot of decent options here for the Seahawks at this point. But yeah,
Yeah, well, as a Super Bowl
mine
winner,
is a sexy new toy.
yeah, and I think like Price very popular across mock drafts for this position. And I know it's a really big need for Seattle because their current running back one is injured, and obviously they lost their
And
other
they're not sure
running
if he's
back
going to
one.
be back for week one either. So.
Yeah, so it's a natural pick, and it's not a very deep running back room. So I could certainly see this happening, but just positional value makes me think they'd rather get the quarterback with the 50-year option, all that kind of stuff. And Colton Hood is a quite highly rated back as well. Like I just feel like Price will slip into the second round just because, like, you could argue less treading the tire is actually a good thing, but you don't have enough on tape to kind of go, this is a guy you can build your backfield around. Okay, so that's our full picks there. As always, for the sake of science, I do what's called a consensus pick, where basically if we both agree, that's our consensus pick. Then there's the consensus mock draft website. So that's NFLmockdraftdatabase.com if you're interested in knowing those. And that basically gives the kind of average overall mock drafts of who was picked in each position. So if we picked a guy and he's also the consensus mock draft guy, we'll use that as a tiebreaker. If none of us agree between the consensus and either of us two, we'll pick the highest rated player of the two that we picked. If both the guys we picked are gone, we'll use a consensus or just the highest rated player. So that gives us a consensus pick of Fernando Mendoza at number 1 to the Raiders, Arvo Reese to the Jets at number 2, David Bailey to the Cardinals at number 3, Jeremiah Love to the Titans at number 4, Sonny Styles to the Giants, Colonel Tate to the Browns, Caleb Dance to the Commanders, Ruben Bain to the Saints, Francis Moaga to the Chiefs, Jordan Tyson to the Giants, Monsieur Delane to the Dolphins, Jamard McCoy to the Cowboys, the Mackay Lemon to the Rams, Lugayane to the Ravens, Akeem Messidor to the Buccaneers, Casey Concepcion to the Jets, Caden Proctor to the Lions, Dylan Tiedemann to the Vikings, Spencer Fano to the Panthers, Celtic Falk to the Cowboys, Monroe Freeling to the Steelers, Peter Woods to the Chargers, Ian Chinor to the Eagles, Omar Cooper to the Browns, Emmanuel McNeil Warren to the Bears, Caden McDonald to the Bills, Caleb Lomu to the 49ers, Besantis to the Texans, Kenyon Sadiq to the Chiefs, Colton Hood to the Dolphins, TJ Parker to the Patriots, and Jadarian Price to the Seahawks. So, the consensus machine has generally won over the last few years because I suppose our consensus tends to be smarter than each of us individually. So we'll see if that comes through again this year.
Yeah, good stuff.
And it's a year where rumors suggest there might be lots of trades, so
Yeah.
that might end screwing up us.
I was saying, I reckon
we
there's
can
going to be
screw ourselves.
I reckon there's going to be a lot of trades, but also the idea of trying to go through one of these episodes where you're like, well, you're picking for the Giants and I'm picking for the Rams, and like everything's just all over. Like, no, we're good. Yeah, because I think there's a couple of guys up very high who are very clearly top of their positions, and then there's a lot of like pick your poison tiers. I think it's going to be cheaper to move around than it maybe would be in other years. So I think,
and famously, the next draft will be the best draft ever, which is what they always say about next year.
It is,
until next year happens.
Every year is
Now, there is-
Christmas Eve.
Like the only thing you can guarantee, unless a catastrophic injury happens, is that Jeremiah Smith, who was like the alpha dog wide receiver in Ohio State, will almost certainly be like a top 3, top 5 pick, because he is the next Julio Jones Megatron type wide receiver.
Yeah, and there's going
everything
to be...
outside that, don't believe it.
No,
like
no.
This guy's going to be the next best quarterback ever.
No,
don't
we can believe
it.
lots of things. We can believe that there's going to be a giant, incredibly well-funded PR machine making sure that Arch Manning is in front of us for 4 months, regardless of whether he deserves it or not.
That's if he comes out next year. I wouldn't be surprised if he just sticks around for longer.
We'll see. We'll see.
But Jeremiah Smith's one of those few, like, oh, even us as non-college guys are like, yeah, like that guy's like really good, so he'll be a top 5 pick probably.
Yeah, pretty good. So you're obviously going to be getting your bits together for a bit of a move. Anything else in the next couple of weeks?
That'll take up most of my time. I believe my sister is near the end of her pregnancy, so I'm sure that'll get me back to Cavan as well in the near future. So yeah, other than that, just trying to find time to get everything, all the bits and bobs done before the move.
That's it. And sure, I've got nothing too wild or crazy. A few bits and pieces, a few bits of holidays and trips and weddings and so on to go to, and then obviously big welcome party for Ronan when he moves up to Dublin and becomes part of the great the metropolitan elite of Ireland. It'd be great. But that'll do us for now. So obviously, best of luck to your team drafting this weekend. I hope you get what you want, unless it's what I want and you take it away from my team, in which case, fuck you. Thanks very much for listening. It's bye from myself. It's bye from Ronan.
Bye.
This has been All Four Quarters. Thanks for listening, and we'll chat to you at some stage.